From the time I was old enough to notice things, I didn't like that house. I was afraid of the upstairs. I never felt safe there. Mama always kept the light burning at bedtime because I was afraid of the dark. One evening, when I was 9, my sister was downstairs and I was asleep in bed. She was expecting Mama to come home at any moment. When she heard the front door open, my sister called out, "Hello, Mama," but there was no answer. She heard footsteps, but they didn't sound like Mama. Her footsteps were light, but these were heavy, like a man. "Who's there?" my sister called, but there was no reply. The footsteps continued up the stairs and wandered into all the bedrooms, but, when my sister called out again, "Who's there?" the footsteps stopped. She was young and afraid, but she knew I was sleeping alone up there, so she took the lamp and searched all the rooms. She even went into the attic, but she didn't find anyone. My sister went back down to the dining room, but as soon as she sat down, the footsteps started again. They came down the stairs, through the dark kitchen, and then the door of the dining room where my sister was sitting slowly began to open. She was scared out of her wits. "Get out," she screamed. The door slowly closed and the footsteps moved out through the kitchen, towards the front door. She heard the door open and shut, so she ran to the window to see who it was. There was nobody in sight and there were no footprints in the fresh snow. That was when she realized that whoever or whatever had walked in, it wasn't human. She huddled on the couch and waited for Mama to come home. Not long after that, we moved out, but something strange happened before we left. My sister and I were in the living room when, all of a sudden, we heard terrible groans. It sounded like someone was in agony. The groans seemed to be coming from the cellar. They were so loud that our dog started howling and the hair stood up on the back of her neck. She would always go anywhere with me, but when I tried to coax her to come down into the cellar with me and investigate, she wouldn't go. The cellar was well lighted, so my sister and I went down, following the groans until we came to a little alcove and there the groans ceased. I wanted to dig right there on the spot, but there was no time. I've always felt that if we had, we would have found the cause of all our trouble. Perhaps someone's bones were buried there. We moved away soon after that, and Mama would never let me ask the people living there today if they had heard anything. We were all glad to get out of that house. They say that if you visit the old school building and go into the classroom, you can still see the blood still dripping down the walls. If you are brave enough, you could even go to the bathroom. Just tap 3 times and scratch 2 times on the door of the 3rd stall. Then open it. You will see the headless body of the little girl sitting on the toilet.
A few years ago, I rented a house in the countryside. My neighbors were a married couple named Lisa and Michael. They had 2 young children, a boy and a girl. They were a nice, quiet family and pretty much kept to themselves. One night, I was awakened by a blood-curdling scream. It sounded like it was coming from the house next door. I jumped out of bed, threw on my dressing gown and ran downstairs. When I got to my front gate, 2 small figures came flying at me and almost knocked me off my feet. I realized it was the kids who lived next door, but I was stunned by their appearance. The boy was in his pajamas and the girl was in her nightie. Their faces were deathly pale and they looked up at me with terror in their eyes. Both kids held on to me and began to cry. Their mother came rushing towards us and I could see she was terrified as well. "What happened?" I asked. "I heard screams. There's someone in our house." Lisa gasped, her voice shaking with fear. I heard someone in the kitchen. I was too afraid to go check. Then I heard someone climbing the stairs, and I heard the door to my children's bedroom opening. Then I heard my daughter screaming. It was terrible. I immediately got the kids and we ran out. "Did you see who it was?" I asked. "No," she replied. The children ran out of the bedroom. I didn't dare to check it. "Please help us. We need to call the police." I looked at the children, still trembling with fear. "Where's their father?" I asked. "He's working the night shift," Lisa said. I told them to go into my house and call the police. She thanked me, took her children by the hand and ran to my house. I decided to check out their house. The front door was standing open. It was dark and silent. All of a sudden, I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I had the strangest feeling that someone was watching me. In the back of my mind, a little voice kept telling me, "It's a trap." I don't know what came over me, but at that moment, I was very scared. Scared of the unknown. Scared of what might be lurking inside the darkened house. "Pull yourself together," I muttered. "You're not a child anymore." I started to walk up the garden path, but then I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. Click. In one of the upstairs windows, the light suddenly came on. The house was supposed to be empty. I looked up at the lighted window, but I didn't see anything, just curtains blowing in the breeze. "There's something up there," the little voice in my head whispered, "and it's not afraid of being found. In fact, it wants you to find it." I tried to tell myself I was just being silly. How stupid was it for an adult man to be afraid to go into a house because he is afraid of ghosts? If it's a thief, I thought to myself, then why would they switch on the lights? Click. The light turned off. What the hell? I thought and took a few steps back. I still did not see anything in the darkness, but I felt goosebumps rising on my skin. Click. The light turned on again. When I looked up at the window, my heart skipped a beat. There was a dark figure standing there. It was a woman. Her skin was taut and shriveled, and her hair was long and unkempt. She looked like a corpse. She just stared down at me with her hollow, empty eye sockets, and she smiled a dead smile. Click. The light went out. I turned and ran back to my own house. When I got to my front door, I banged on it until the neighbor lady let me in. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and anxiety. My face was pale and my eyes were so frightened that the children began to cry again. "Water," I panted. "I need water." Lisa grabbed a glass, filled it with water, and handed it to me. I downed it in one gulp. My heart was pounding and I had broken into a cold sweat. I was afraid that I was having a heart attack. "Did you call the police?" I asked, trying to pull myself together. "They're on their way," she said. "Did you check the house?" Let's just wait for the police," I replied. A few minutes later, the police finally arrived. They searched the house from top to bottom, but they didn't find any thief. There was no one there at all. The police questioned the neighbors, but nobody had seen or heard anything. When they questioned me, I didn't tell them what I had seen. What could I tell them? That I had seen a dead woman in the window, smiling an unearthly smile? Nobody would believe me. The police eventually finished up their business and left to take care of more important things. Around 7 o'clock in the morning, the woman's husband came home. The children were glad to see him, and together, the family returned to their house. I tried not to look at their house, especially at the upstairs window. After that crazy night, I began to have trouble sleeping. As soon as I closed my eyes, I would see the face of the dead woman. Then, life seemed to get back to normal. The neighbors gradually managed to forget all about the incident. No one screamed during the night, and I didn't see any dead bodies standing in windows. Everything seemed to be back on track, and life was good. But one evening, about a month later, I heard someone knocking on my front door. The knock was loud and strong. They kept banging and banging as if they were going to break my door down. I looked through the peephole and saw that it was the neighbor lady, Lisa. I opened the door and found her standing there, grinning at me. "What happened?" I asked. She didn't reply. She just smiled and walked straight past me. She went into my house and turned left, into the living room. She left me standing on the doorstep, dumbfounded. That fixed smile on her face unnerved me. It was so creepy, almost inhuman. It made me shiver from head to toe. It was dark outside and no birds were singing. I was about to follow her inside when I heard voices coming from the house next door. When I glanced over the fence, I saw the neighbor children playing in the front yard. Then I froze. I could not believe what I was seeing. Lisa was there. She was standing there in her front yard, playing with the children. I couldn't move. Felt like my entire body was paralyzed with fear. The little voice in my head was asking only one question. If Lisa is over there, then who is in my living room? I didn't stop to check. I immediately ran to the house next door and asked my neighbors to call the police. 2 officers arrived and searched my house from top to bottom, but they didn't find a living soul. How could they? The only person in my house was a dead woman. The next morning, I left the house and I didn't come back. Now I live in a city where there are more live people and less dead. I heard that my former neighbors, Michael and Lisa, moved out soon after I left. I asked around and one of my friends said that the reason they moved was because the mother and father of the family had gone insane. They're such fools, my friend laughed. They thought that their house was haunted. I tried to laugh along with him, but I couldn't even muster a smile. A young man named Charlie got a new job with a cleaning company. He had to work all night cleaning office buildings after the executives had gone home. Because he was new to the job, he was being trained in by an old man named Zeke. One night, Charlie and Zeke were cleaning the men's bathroom in the basement of a big office complex. Suddenly, Charlie heard a loud scream coming from somewhere close by. He ran out of the bathroom into the hallway. The screams were coming from the women's bathroom next door. Charlie opened the door and looked inside. There was a young woman standing there, weeping and clutching herself. Her clothes were torn. "Are you okay?" asked Charlie. "Someone's in the toilet," she screamed. "He grabbed me." Zeke appeared at the door and said, "Charlie, what the heck is going on?" Suddenly, all the sinks in the bathroom began spraying out water. With that, the young woman began screaming and crying hysterically. She rushed past Zeke, fleeing out the bathroom door. Charlie could see that one of the stalls in the basement bathroom was closed. He approached it cautiously and peeked under the door. He couldn't see any feet. "What's wrong, Charlie?" asked Zeke. Charlie gently pushed the door of the stall. It slowly creaked open to reveal an empty cubicle. There was nobody there. Breathing a sigh of relief, Charlie went around to all the sinks and turned off the taps. "What was that all about?" asked Zeke. "I don't know," said Charlie. "It's very strange. Something caused all those taps to start spraying out water. It's creepy." "I heard stories," said Zeke. "Years ago, there was a murder in this office building. They told me it happened in the ladies' bathroom. Late at night, the basement bathroom. They say it's haunted and the murderer was never caught." "I don't believe in ghosts," said Charlie. "There has to be some logical explanation for why the taps in the sinks suddenly turned on. It wasn't supernatural, but whatever it was, it sure scared that woman." "Who?" asked Zeke. "The woman who was screaming," replied Charlie. "She ran right past you." Zeke's eyes grew wide as he whispered, "I didn't see any woman, Charlie. I didn't hear anyone screaming. You and I are the only ones in the building." 3 college students named Devin, Bethany, and Seth are driving along a lonely mountain road when all of a sudden, they hit a rock. The car swerves off the edge of a cliff and they plunge into a lake. When they all emerge from the water, they breathe a sigh of relief, happy to still be alive. However, when they look around, they are horrified to see their own bodies, still trapped in the sinking car. Stunned, the 3 friends swim to the shore and try to figure out what happened. "I know what I saw," Bethany says. "Those were our bodies in the car. When it hit the water, I felt my neck snap," Devin says. "The next thing I remember, we were in the water. I don't remember getting out of the car either," says Seth. "We must have died in the wreck," says Devin. "You guys, I think we're ghosts." Just then, a truck comes speeding down the road and almost hits them. "Get out of the road, you morons," the driver shouts. "He saw us," says Seth. "That guy saw us, so we can't be dead." "We are dead," Devin insists. "We saw our bodies. But how could we die and still be alive?" Seth asks. Nobody witnessed the accident, says Bethany. If a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Maybe the reason we're still alive is that we're the only ones who know that we're dead. The three of them go back to college and try to act like nothing happened. Cheer up, Seth laughs. This is the first day of the rest of our lives. Devin is still haunted by the fact that he has cheated death. He feels like it's a sin. When I think of myself down in that car, he says, I feel like I belong there. Devin is very religious and he needs advice, so he goes to see a priest for confession. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned, he says. I was in a car crash. 2 of my friends were killed. No one saw it happen. No one knows. You haven't told the police? The priest asks. Or your friends' families? No, Devin replies. Let me help, says the priest. I can break the news to your friends' loved ones. What are their names? Devin takes a deep breath. Seth Moran, he whispers. All of a sudden, Seth disappears. Bethany Daniels, he whispers. Bethany suddenly disappears as well. There was one more, Devin whispers. Me. I died in the crash. The priest doesn't believe a word of it. Devin, this is absurd, he says. You're talking nonsense. Bethany and Seth reappear, just as suddenly as they vanished, coughing and choking and throwing up water. Back in their campus dorm, Bethany and Seth are desperate to stay alive. They're worried that Devin is going to ruin everything. If he can't keep his mouth shut, we're all going to die, says Seth. The car is only 10 feet down, says Bethany. Sooner or later, someone is going to find the car, and us. We've got to get our bodies out of there, says Seth. We can bury them in the woods. Deep, Bethany agrees. As deep as we can. Devin still can't come to terms with what happened. He thinks his salvation depends on his body being found, so he goes back to the lake. When Bethany and Seth realize what he is up to, they race back to the lake to stop him. Devin dives into the water and swims down to the car, which is perched precariously on a narrow outcropping. Peering through the window, Devin can see his own dead body, and Seth's body, and Bethany's body. He can't open the car door, so he pulls back the canopy. He tries to pull his own body out, but it's wedged between the steering wheel and the seat. No matter how hard he tries, he can't budge it. However, as he pulls and tugs, he accidentally frees the bodies of Seth and Bethany, and they float up towards the surface. Devin is horrified when the car tips over and plunges down into the depths, taking his body with it. Bethany and Seth arrive just in time to see their own corpses floating in the water. A passing fisherman spots the dead bodies and rows his boat closer to take a look. Devin swims back up to the surface, and as he watches in horror, Bethany and Seth disappear. Oh God, no, he screams. It was supposed to be me, not them. It was supposed to be me. Devin is doomed to wander the earth for all eternity. His body will never be found. He will never be able to die. He will never be at peace.